So good day. This will be the last part or lesson 3 of operations management, competitiveness, strategy, and productivity. So now we are going to discuss more on productivity. So productivity. What does it mean by productivity or being productive? So productivity is a measure of the effectiveness of resources, usually expressed as the ratio of output to input. It is another definition would be an index that measures output. So the output may be in the form of goods and services or both relative to the input. So the input may be in the form of either labor, materials, energy, and other resources used to produce it. Productivity is important for all business. However, it is particularly important for organizations to use a strategy of low cost. Why? Because the higher the productivity, the lower the cost of the output. This is mainly true in mass production of goods. Or you might probably try this, that it's better to make a 2 kilos of spaghetti compared to half kilo only and then sell it. So when you are talking about cost, mas daghan, mas barato kung maghimo, di ba? Wala man ka nakakita og na maligya o karinderya nga magluto ra og tagsa ka serve, right? So productivity has important implications for business organization and for the entire nation. For non-profit organization, there are non-profit organizations, guys, like churches, like schools, charities. Higher productivity means lower cost. For profit-based organization, productivity is an important factor in determining how competitive a company is because you can produce a lot. But when you're say you can produce a lot, you produce a lot in which it is what is being demanded, not just produce and produce without knowing the real demand of your market. And productivity, as in terms of nation, this is the rate of productivity growth. So productivity growth is of great importance. Productivity growth is the increase in productivity from one period to the next relative to the productivity in the preceding period. That's why you can probably hear in news or read in newspaper, either the hard copy newspaper or online news, wherein they measure productivity of a certain country or growth of a certain country, comparing previous years or even in quarters. Like we produce more rice during the second quarter compared to the first quarter, or the growth, the number of rice produced in terms of metric ton this year is better or is less compared to the rice produced last year. So that is how productivity growth as a nation is being measured. And almost always economists are taking this into consideration when they measure productivity. So there are computations when you're talking about productivity. So productivity is just simple as output divided by input. So whatever the output, you divide it by the input. And then when you're talking about productivity growth, it is the current productivity less the previous productivity being compared, divided by previous productivity times 100%. So this is just basic algebra. So basic mathematics. You're good with this because somehow you're already on a higher level of math, right? You've learned algebra since elementary. So next, productivity growth. So here we have an example of productivity growth just for to give you an overview of how it is being done. So if productivity increase from 85 to 89, you will the productivity growth is computed as you can see here, I'm pointing out 89 current productivity, that is 89 less the previous productivity divided by 85. So that's 89 minus 85 is 4 divided by 85 times 100% is 4.7. So easy, so easy. Productivity growth is a key factor in a country's rate of inflation and the standard of living of its people. Productivity increases add value to the economy, keeping inflation in check. Productivity growth is a major factor in the long period of sustained economic growth. So this is how to give you an example on how productivity growth is being computed. So easy. You can memorize this like the back of your hand, or you can do this even in your sleep. So the next is computing productivity. Actually, there are a lot of computation in productivity. It depends on what type of productivity. So if for simple, you just have output divided by the input. So the output may be in the terms of service or product. So the input may be in the terms of labor, machine, capital, or energy. So that is partial measures. For multi-factor measures, you have output divided by a combination of different inputs. Like this, for this example, this one, you have labor plus machine. Another is labor plus capital and energy. So you have to add this all, and then you have to divide output divided by the input. And then there's also total measures. So goods or services produced. And then all inputs used to produce them. So probably labor, machine, capital, energy, everything, every input used to produce them. So for you to have an idea what labor productivity, machine, capital, and energy. So labor productivity are the units of output per labor hour, units of output per shift. So either per labor hour or per shift, or value added per labor hour, or dollar value of out per labor hour. So typically the labor or the manpower. So if it is the machine, the machinery that does all the things, units of output per machine hour, or the dollar value of output per machine hour, it depends. So capital productivity, units of output per dollar input. So how much, if you input $1, what is the output? Energy productivity, so the kilowatt or the kilowatt or the electricity used every time you produce something. So that is computing productivity. So to give you an example on how to compute partial measures and multi-factor measures, the following slide will give that example. So computing productivity, determine here is our problem, guys. Determine the productivity of the following. 4 workers installed 720 square yards of carpeting in 8 hours. So how to do that? So we know that productivity is output divided by input. So our output here is yards of carpet installed. And then our input is labor. We have 4 workers work in 8 hours. So labor hours work. So we have 720 yards of carpets being installed by 4 divided by the 4 workers, and then 4 workers work for 8 hours. So if you compute that, you will get 22 yards, so 22.5 yards per hour. So technically, this is what the workers done in per hour. So they have covered the floor. They have carpeted 22.5 yards of floor area in 1 hour, and then they've in 8 hours they have done the 720. So make sure, guys, reminder, never forget the unit of measure you were used when you solve a problem, because if you just put here 22.5 of what, diba? So don't forget the unit of measure. Now we go to the multi-factor productivity. So determine the multi-factor productivity for the combined input of labor and machine time using the following data. So you have output is 7,040 units. And then the inputs are the labor, the materials, and the overhead. So how are you going to do that? First, you identify it, the output, and then divide it by the labor as our input, the materials, and the overhead. So you add all the input and then substitute it. So 7,040 units divided by $1,000 for labor, $520 for materials, and then $2,000 for the overhead cost. When you compute all that, you get 2 units per dollar in. So this is the multi-factor productivity, and your output per dollar input is 2 units. Okay? Productivity measures are useful on a number of levels. For an individual department or organization, productivity measures can be used to track performance over time. So to track performance of that certain department. This allows managers to judge performance and to decide where improvements are needed. So when you know that this department is very or less productive, then you know that I need to improve them in this area. If they're very productive, then you still have to train them to be more productive. Productivity measures also can be used to judge the performance of the entire industry or the productivity of a country as a whole. I already mentioned that productivity is used in measuring a country's growth. So this productivity, when it is as a whole, or the industry as a whole, the country as a whole, these productivity measures is called aggregate measures. Productivity measurements serve as a scorecard for effective use of resources, because once you know you're very productive and you're efficient in using the resources you got to create an output, then you can measure your effectiveness in the use of resources. Productivity measures are useful in a lot of levels. So it is used, or it is a measure to know that the company or a nation as a whole is being effective in using its resources. We were talking about the productivity that we have, the multi-factor or the easy one. It's easy to measure the productivity, right? But if you are talking about productivity in the service sector, this productivity in the service sector is more problematic than manufacturing productivity. So in many situations, it is more difficult to measure and thus to manage, because it involves intellectual activities and high degree of variability, very varied during sa service. Because when you think about, let's say, for example, think about medical diagnosis or surgery or consulting or legal services or customer services or repair work. This is because when you are talking about service, you will experience how they serve you or their output during the time they serve you. Let's just say you avail of a massage. How will you know that the masseuse is productive and being effective and efficient in what he or she is doing to you if you have not tried massage, or even in manicure and pedicure services? This is because we experience service productivity kung kanus ata mo avail niya. Unlike aning sa manufacturing wherein mas dali siya i-measures kay basta kay kabalo ko nga mo ni ako ang output, yung mo ni akong labor gigamit. Naa naman kay inana, dili man pareha sa service nga yes, kabalo ka nga output nimo is mahuman kag masahe sa isa ka tawo, or kung manicure pedicure ka human kag manicure pedicure sa isa ka tawo. Pero pag abot na nimo sa labor, what if baga kay siya magpa-pedicure? What if baga kay siya og kubal yung ingron po kay halos tanan niyang kuko gipang ingron. So sa man yung pag-measure ana sa in terms of labor, di ba? Human imong bayad yung man unsa pa imong materials gigamit dira. So let's just say materials sa imong cuticle remover o sa imong nipper pusher ug uban pa. Ang nail cutter basin tungod sa katura yung mga kuko mapadagan na kay ingron na habol lang imong nail cutter or napudpud ang imong pusher. So it's really hard to measure the productivity sa service because daghan ako kang gina-consider nga aspect kay and then kung magmasahe sa, di ba? Daghan kay kang i-consider mo. There are a lot of things that you have to consider. Like for example, in another example is a massage. And then what if you're a slim individual, liwangon ra ka, gamayon kag lawas, and then mutana tong masahista nimo, ma'am, what type of massage man? Say level imuhang kakusog sa massage, soft ra ba, medium or hard? Gamay ra kang bayi, gamay ra kang laki, pero imuhang ganan nga massage nga hard nga katong murag is anay jud nga bunulanay jud. Kabalo, the masseuse knows that the output is humana siyang masahe nimo. Na-satisfy siguro ka. But when you're talking of how productive he or she is in sa iyang pagmamasahe, dili man ka makaingon nga mas productive ni siya kaysa ani kaysa ana. Kaayuhon man kag masahe, dapat makaayuhon niya masahe. Kusgon pagod niya kay bali nimong aside sa gamay kag lawas, bahala gamay kag lawas, daghan pagod kag panungot, magsige siya piyod. So something like that. It's hard to determine the productivity in terms of service because you need to experience it firsthand. Unlike when you're buying a cell phone, you already have a review, you already know the specification, you already know what are the chipsets, what are the technology inside that cell phones. But when you avail of a service, a manicure for that matter, a pedicure or a massage, you still do not know what to expect. Yes, someone may have referred it to you that they're very satisfied with their service, but satisfaction in terms of service depends from person to person. It's personal. My perspective of good, productive, very productive manicurista or very productive masseuse may not be very, for you, may not be. So that's why what businesses do in order to really know if they are being productive or if they need to improve their services, they use customer feedback. They use customer survey. However, at times, surveys like this does not reflect on the real capability or productivity of the service because not all customers are truthful in their survey answers. Some they just check because they just want this to be done. Right? So that's why it's really hard on the survey side to really measure productivity. I hope you get that. I know you get that. You have experienced it. So what are the factors that affects productivity? There are various factors actually. So numerous factors affect productivity. So generally, the factors that affect productivity are, of course, the method, the capital, the quality, the technology, and the machineries. However, these things that I posted here in a slide are also the factors that affect productivity. Standardizing. So process and procedures, wherever possible, to reduce variability can have a significant benefit for both productivity and quality. Like standardized, the size is standardized, the measurement is standardized. This is done mostly in mass-produced products. If it is not improved, it can affect not only productivity but of course quality. Quality differences may distort productivity measurement. One way this can happen in which comparisons are made over time, such as comparing productivity of a factory now within 30 years ago. Quality is now much higher than it was then. So, but there is no simple way to incorporate quality improvements into productivity measurements also. So the use of the internet can lower cost of wide range of transaction, thereby increasing productivity. It is likely that the effect will continue to increase productivity in the foreseen future. Actually, the internet has tremendously increased productivity. When most of us, when we want to know something, okay, we don't need to go to the library or scan the thousands of pages of of dictionary just to know what the meaning of this, or go to an almanac or whatever to know something. We just have to a tap of our finger, and then we know something, and then copy paste it, almost always plagiarizing everything because we don't notify or give credits to the main contributor of definitions and the likes, right? So for your assignments and activities that you may have that requires the use of the internet, it has increased our productivity actually. But there are not so good side about it because information floods online, and we forgot to filter what informations are truth or what informations are trash. So computer viruses can have an immense negative impact on productivity. Of course, if your laptops or if your computer, or imagine just your cell phone having a bug, decreases its capacity, your cell phone only. Imagine if that happens to an organization whose computer system, a very big computer system, wide computer system gets virus. It really hampers the productivity of that industry or that business. Searching for lost or misplaced items. So waste times, hence negatively affecting productivity. So yes, of course, searching for something that is already not there, or searching for something that does not want to be searched, can decrease productivity, of course. But with today's technology, like linking your phone to your watch, registering your phone on cloud, or registering your phone in the internet, among other platforms that you can track your phone. If it's lost, you can just track it online, and then it's easy to search them, and it's easy to capture bad people if your phones or gadgets are stolen, right? Scrap rates have an adverse effect on productivity, signaling inefficient use of resources. When you talk about scrap, these are things in the production that are wastage. If dagan kang usik, guys, makaunsa man na sa productivity, di ba? Usik mo na siya, waste naman na siya, and may gula ni mo na siya by ring. So it it only signals that if there are a lot of scraps, it means they are not efficient in using your resources. New workers can be very, very, very challenging because you have to train them, and they can have lower productivity because they're new in the industry. So this happens probably, or this mostly occurs during seasonal worker, like during the you hire a lot of people during Christmas or among other holidays that requires a lot of number of people. But because they are new in the company, they may be contribute less in the entire productivity of the company. Safety should be addressed. Accidents can take a toll on productivity. Irony, actually, it is very, very important for organization to take notice on the safety and wellness of its employees. However, the irony is sometimes the company is thinking about your safety and applying safety materials and warnings and guidelines about it. I've seen this actually. You might probably have observed this in a construction site wherein the carpenters and the laborers needs to wear boots or steel toe boots for safety, or where they have to wear hard hat, they have to wear gloves. But then again, they feel like, I don't know, they're Superman probably. They take off their hat, they take off their gloves, and then accident happen and blame the company. But in short, but but in short, but actually the company is doing its best to give them the right clothing or the right issue of shoes, probably gloves and the hard hat to make them safety. But it's also their negligence. That's why things happen to them. However, there are also companies who, I don't know, probably they just want output, not thinking about the safety of their people. They just take advantage of their labor. Sometimes there are some wherein even as simple as providing them with good bathrooms, good water closet, they cannot provide that. So, and it's unsafe to just do your thing anywhere if nature calls. So hope, and then, or I don't know, hopefully when you if you're having a job right now, make sure that, or take into consideration, if you are in the top level management, or in the future you're going to be the top level management, make sure that you consider the safety of your people. Shortage of technology savvy workers hampers the ability of companies to update computing resources, generate and sustain growth, and take advantage of new opportunities. Actually, this is a challenge wherein, or even now, some young generations I can probably say that they're not that, they're technology savvy, but they're not good at technical. Like, they know how to use Microsoft Words, but they don't know how to manipulate the basics of it. They know what Excel is or PowerPoint presentation is, but they do not know the basics of which. I don't know if there's a problem with how they were being taught, or it's just the lack of resources within the confines of the classroom, but or they just don't want to explore more, or they're okay with what they know, they don't want to improve more. This is also challenging if your manpower are all above middle age, and then the introduction of computer was not in their generation, and then will have a hard time understanding the new species and breed of technology, how to manipulate social media, how to manipulate as simple as Google Classroom or Zoom or during meetings, especially now. This can also hampers productivity. Layoffs affect productivity, especially during crisis, when crisis we're in, there's economic crisis, political crisis, or crisis around the world, that you really need to lay off people, because if you don't lay off people, the company will also die. You need to lay off to continue in the business, and then labor turnover has a negative effect on productivity, because this is when labor turnover, this is when manpower resign, retire, and if they resign and transfer to another company and you have to hire another one, train them, it can hamper the productivity, because when they retire, something is missing already in the production floor. If they retire, it's okay, they retire. You can have someone replace them. But when labor or the manpower of the organization keeps on resigning, after 6 months they resign, after 3 months they resign, then this can affect productivity, especially if the resignation is very rampant. And then design of the workspace can impact productivity. So the term for this is more on the ergonomics. The ergonomics, how the space of the business or the office is being designed can actually improve the perspective of the people working in that organization. Kinsa may ganahan mo trabaho og office nga baling inita nga mura ka ga practice og impyerno? How can you be productive in such environment, right? And you're in an office. That's probably considerable if you are in the production floor and you're cooking something or boiling some things. It is expected to be very hot, but you have necessary equipment for that, right? You have necessary suit for that. But if you are in an office entertaining customers and it's very, very hot, do you think you can be productive? Do you think you can entertain 100 customers per day if that is the type of workspace you have? No, I don't think so. So incentive plans that rewards productivity increase. So this can actually boost productivity if you're like, if you can reach this type of this quota within this day, within the month, you're given this award or reward. If you go beyond that certain quota in a month, then there's another type of reward waiting for you. That's actually boost productivity. And there are still other factors that affect productivity, such as equipment breakdowns and shortages of parts or materials. The education level and training of workers and their health can greatly affect productivity. The opportunity to obtain lower costs due to higher productivity elsewhere is a key reason many organizations turn to outsourcing. So, hence, an alternative to outsourcing can be improved productivity. Moreover, as part of their strategy for quality, the best organizations strive for continuous improvement. Continuous improvement, this is part of quality that will be discussed by the reporters. Productivity improvement can be an important aspect in that approach. So, continuous improvement. I'm almost done, don't worry. So how are you going to improve productivity? First, develop productivity measures for all operations. There are a lot of operations in the organization. So if you want to improve or develop productivity, not only in one aspect of the organizations, but productivity in the whole organization as the whole. Look at the system as a whole in deciding which operations are most critical. And then you've seen that, then you start within that area for improvement. It is overall productivity that is important. Managers need to reflect on the value of potential productivity improvements before okaying improvement efforts. So the issue is effectiveness. There are several aspects for this. One is to make sure that result will be something customer wants when you're talking about productivity. For example, if a company is able to increase its output through productivity improvements, but then it is unable to sell the increased output, the increase in productivity isn't effective. Okay? So next is develop method for achieving productivity improvements such as soliciting ideas from workers. You might wonder why are we going to solicit ideas from the workers? Mind you guys, in strategic management, you're done with strategic management, right? In strategic management, ideas from workers may be a great idea that the top level may have not think of. So you solicit ideas, you brainstorm, and then coordinate with them. Perhaps organizing teams of workers, engineers, and managers, studying how other firms may have increased productivity, and re-examining the work, how your work and it's done. Establish reasonable goals for improvement. Reasonable goals. Remember, goals should be SMART. SMART. Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. So you have to anchor your goals for improvement to that concept of being smart. Make it clear that management supports and encourages productivity improvement. Consider incentives to reward workers for contribution. So make it clear that management supports, because the lower level may want improvement and productivity, but management does not support it. One way or the other, the efforts will just be trash. Make sure, measure improvements and publicize them, of course. When you have improved something, you don't need probably publicize it in the organization, and then if you've done a really well job, you can actually announce it to the world that you have done this. These are the necessary measures you've done in order to improve your productivity. Then some company, or this also signals your competition. Oh, your competition. Oh, this is what they've done. So probably we can copy this, or this may become your competitive advantage. But don't confuse productivity with efficiency. Efficiency is a narrower concept that pertains to getting the most of a fixed set of resources. Productivity is a broader concept that pertains to effective use of overall resources. So to give you an example between efficiency and productivity, efficiency perspective is on mowing a lawn. Giving a hand mower would focus on the best way to use the hand mower. However, productivity perspective would include the possibility of using a mower power. Get that? I hope you get that. Efficient, when you're efficient, getting most of time in most, or getting more output with less time and resources. But when you're talking about productivity, it is a broader concept. It is the effective use of overall resources. Okay? So that ends. These are the references. Thank you and have a good day.